Wilkinson had a full squad to choose from after the international break. It had been announced that the Aston Villa game would be moved to the Sunday and would be shown live on ITV. But before that, a visit from Queen's Park Rangers, who were unbeaten in their previous 6 away league games.
Well, McAllister and Sterland are not short of confidence in hitting them from this sort of distance. And it will be Sterland who gets it through, and it's gone in! From an astonishing distance, Mel Sterland, with the aid of a deflection, breaks the deadlock. 59 minutes gone, and Mel Sterland claims the 50th goal of his Football League career. McAllister went over it, Sterland belted it in, it came off Parker, enough to confuse Stejskal. Strachan will take his time over this corner. Leeds are 5 men inside the QPR penalty area. Will Strachan find any of them? Ooh. It's hitting low, and Wallace comes for it. It's in the net. The Leeds have got their second, and Rod Wallace has got his first league goal for Leeds United. A real variation on a corner kick, this one. Strachan fairly blasted it across. It got the little nudge on from Sterland, and Wallace at the far post did enough to deflect it in. And Leeds 2, Queen's Park Rangers 0. The game has a different look about it.
I think at that time, the experts, you know, the pundits, would have looked at us at the start of that season and said, our squad, our play, overall, we weren't as good as them or them. There'd have been 3 or 4 clubs, 5 clubs, who people considered had overall better players than us. That may or may not have been the case. But the fact is that we, from you know, my first full season there, we'd won the championship, then we'd finished 4th, and then we're off again. And in the real world, in the nice organised world, it was all happening a bit quick. I mean, very, very difficult to keep pace with all that. You know, I mean, imagine that now. And looking back in history, I can't think of too many clubs that's done that anyway. So it was like, you know, it was a train hurtling along.
We really did take every chunk of games, you know, as it come, and we were kind of just on target, you know, to do well. And then, you know, you'd look at the next lot of games, think, right, if you can get, you know, 6 points out of the next 9 points, then we're on target, and on we kept going and going. It wasn't really, I didn't really feel huge amounts of pressure until you got, you know, very close to actually it being a reality. At that point, it was kind of all pretty new. It was enjoyable. We'd go out to Ellen Road and I'd look at the opposition and they're struggling. I mean, this is great, and we're 2-0 up in 20 minutes and on we go. And then we just took that away from home as well. So we just kept riding it.
The game at Villa Park proved to be an excellent choice for ITV. Leeds were second, having dropped points at Wimbledon, while Villa, having won 5 in a row, had leapt from 16th to 4th. And Ron Atkinson, the Villa manager, perhaps heaped a little bit more pressure on Leeds by saying they were going to be the closest challengers to Manchester United for the title.
In that week before, we worked very, very hard on how we were going to play against them. And I think it was Daly who's in their side, who at that time was an enormous problem to teams.
The focus on Howard was, as I said about Strachan being our playmaker, Tony Daly was Aston Villa's roamer. He was the playmaker that joined things up. So Howard that week turned around and says, Chris Fairclough is going man-to-man on Tony Daly, and we're playing 10 against 10.
So it didn't matter where Daly went across our back 4, we had Chrissy man-to-man on him. He played up the middle, Chrissy had him, and we played 3 at the back. If he went out on our right, Chris went with him and played right back. Mel Sterling pushed forward, good attacking player. If he went over the other side, Chris went with him. Tony DeRigo pushed forward, good attacking player. So we kept our full-backs in a position where they could go forward, and at the same time we made sure we didn't get done on the break.
You think, you know, probably 25, 30 years ago, the fullbacks as such were defenders, and they were big, tall guys, and that's what they did. That was their role. I think we had a solid defence, but I had the licence to really get forward. So I ended up thinking, well, I can defend against you, no problems, but are you going to chase me back? And when you've got that much possession and you're that confident, in those players around you, it becomes very easy for me to cause my winger more problems than he's causing me.
And Sterling can hurl the ball quite a distance. Goes short, of course, inevitably the moment I say that. He gets it back from Strachan. Good-looking cross. Chapman's header! Marvellous save, but it's Wallace who follows up, and it's a goal for Leeds United. Seeley at last is beaten, and Leeds United go in front.
He's a bit unlucky, Les Seeley, because I thought it was a good save. Gets a touch, and I think we'll have to give that to Rob Wallace, Alan.
White has come forward to the near post, as ever, with Chapman. There he is. And White just got the touch in, and it's a goal! What a great start to the second half. Sterling on the end of the flick on, and Leeds United have scored within a minute and a half of the restart.
Well, Alan, that'll completely kill Big Ron's team talk at half-time. Flick on, now Sterling goes in.
Classic corner kick goal, really. Strachan delivering it beautifully. White's flick on. Sterling got in between the defenders to head home. He doesn't score many headers. He gets a lot of goals for a defender, not many of them with the head. So Chapman goes to the near post as ever. They'll be well advised to keep a careful eye here, not only on White and Chapman, but also, of course, on Sterling, who scored from the previous corner. Goes in short this time, and a lovely little back heeler. Strachan into the danger zone, it's turned in. Chapman, I think, on the line. It's 3-0 to Leeds United. Strachan, the architect, and Leeds United have made a dream start to this second half.
Well, surely there's no way back for Villa now. Great little play between McAllister and Strachan there. Great corner move. Gordon nips in there, hits it hard and low, and you should see Lee Chapman in the perfect place to finish it off.
But Leeds hunt it down again and win possession. Daly did well then to take it off Batty. Forward to Atkinson. He's got in well here. Good effort. Saved by Lukic. And then turned over the line by York. Villa will pull one back. Sterling, one of the goal scorers for Leeds United. Finds Strachan. Still time for a final flourish, perhaps, from Leeds United. Sterling. Chapman in a good position on the far post. There he is! And there is the final flourish! Chapman gets his second goal of the game. Leeds United their fourth. And for the third match in succession against Aston Villa, Lee Chapman has scored 2 goals.
Yeah, great goal as well. Nicely worked move. In fact, the two players involved in it, Mo Sterling and Lee Chapman, were almost utmost in my thinking as far as man of the match was concerned. And if that had happened a couple of minutes earlier, one of them might have got it.
We scored some great goals, and it was on television. It was a Sunday afternoon. And in those days, when things aren't as televised as they are now, it's also good for the brand. It was also good for the team. It meant when people watch that, oh, and it's not bad to have people, particularly the ones you're going to play, thinking, oh, this mob aren't bad.
Villa was my first club as well. They're a great club, but to go there and dominate and possession, I think, and when we went forward, we were just irresistible. And you talk about the big guy and the little guy with Chapman and Wallace, and you get it out wide and you get it in. Sounds all very simple, but we just did it. We kept winning the ball back, playing it in the right areas, and we carved through them. It's a lovely feeling when all that sort of thing happens.
The fast-flowing attacking football Leeds had shown to the masses on TV demonstrated just why they held top spot in the table. Villa in fourth had taken a comprehensive beating, but there was now a little gap developing between the top 2 and third place. This has been a fantastic performance and result, and achieved in front of millions watching on television. Gordon Strachan described it as the best performance of the season. Some said it was the greatest result of Howard Wilkinson's time at Leeds United. The fact was clear: Leeds were back on top and were now second favourites for the title, ahead of both Arsenal and Liverpool. After the success of the Villa game, ITV announced that Leeds would be on the television again against Manchester United at the end of November. But Howard Wilkinson was concerned about distraction. Only 17 league games had been played. It was still early in the season. He knew there was a tough proposition coming up next in the shape of Everton. Everton proved resolute opposition, but not even the dismissal of Chris Fairclough could deny Leeds, who snatched a late victory thanks to a sumptuous volley from Rod Wallace. Well, that had truly been a tough battle, but Leeds had deservedly come through it, and it showed they were going to have to win matches in all manner of ways. Chris Fairclough had been controversially sent off for a push on Everton's Mark Ward. Next up, a trip to Kenilworth Road. Luton Town, on the face of it, not the strongest of opposition, down near the bottom of the table, and yet had been beaten at home only twice all season. The teams traded shots in the first half, but the contest was ended inside the final 20 minutes. First, Rod Wallace volleyed home from close range. And then Gary Speed expertly collected a pinpoint Sterling cross to fire right-footed into the Luton net. Events away from the league took prominence, with both Leeds United and Manchester United in the last 8 of the Rumbelows Cup. It was no surprise when the old rivals were paired together. And then, would you believe it, when the draw for the third round of the FA Cup was made, who came out together? Leeds United and Manchester United. All 3 games between the clubs would take place here at Ellen Road, and all 3 would be televised. Howard Wilkinson, though, was concerned about some stories appearing in the press, which didn't amuse him.
The sort of article that does nobody in any favours, probably most importantly the newspaper, and probably even more importantly one of the people who's responsible for that article, because it's very, very irresponsible.
The trio of meetings with Manchester United were relatively a long time away, so Wilkinson needed to get his team focused for the visit of a highly experienced Tottenham Hotspur team. The Leeds manager described his side as being asleep in the opening stages. Indeed, it was on 18 minutes that Tottenham took advantage of a lapse in concentration between Chris White and Tony DeRigo. Paul Allen nipped in. His cross led to Lukic making a save, but David Howells was on the spot to head the ball just beneath the crossbar. It was just before half-time that Leeds got their equaliser. Torsfed under pressure and Gary Speed hammering in the shot. Torsfed later discovered he'd broken his nose. For the neutrals, this had been an exciting game, including 40 shots, 16 of them on target. Leeds also hit the woodwork twice. But this was the only time they managed to hit the net. During a season which had created many talking points, another one occurred 3 days before Christmas, with Leeds United due to go to the City Ground to face Nottingham Forest. The clubs agreed to delay the match by 24 hours, so the fans could just get in a bit extra Christmas shopping. Defences were on top at the City Ground, and McClelland and White both gained praise for Leeds, but Forest should have scored when Teddy Sheringham met Gary Charles's cross. Strachan was replaced by Gary Kelly, and Forest nearly won it with Nigel Clough missing the target by inches. Leeds were disappointed to have dropped points there, but there had been some encouraging individual performances, notably from the Irishman, John McClelland, stepping into the side. And Howard Wilkinson, he picked out David Batty, whose performances he described as exceptional.
I never used to go for corner kicks or free kicks, and I was very happy to keep a clean sheet. And what I found strange was it was my job to make the game very boring. Was TV looking for excitement, but I thought, if I make the game boring, I've done my job.
With the Forest game having been put back 24 hours, there was little time to prepare for the Boxing Day meeting with Southampton, a club with a poor disciplinary record, as 40 yellow cards and 3 red ones proved. With Strachan out for the visit of the Saints, Steve Hodge was given the armband, a responsibility he grasped with 2 goals in 3 minutes, both from excellent crosses from Mel Sterland. Leeds really taking control of the game. This one, Chapman and then Sterland. Hodge perfectly placed, less than 5 yards out. Southampton looking rather strange in blue, did certainly have strength up front. You may recognise the names. They hit back in the second half with a certain Ian Dowie on the mark. The margin reduced to 2-1. But the 2-goal advantage was restored again with perseverance down the right side, typically from Mel Sterland. Once again he got the ball over into the 6-yard box. And this was a really typical Gary Speed header. However, Leeds then sat back and allowed 18-year-old Alan Shearer to make a name for himself by powering the ball in. The deficit reduced once again. And it was that Shearer-Dowie combination which earned Southampton an equaliser. This time a header from Shearer, opening the door for Dowie.
Sometimes I struggled against big, powerful men that sort of Shearer did know what he was doing, but sometimes people that aren't orthodox. And Dowie wasn't orthodox. He played for Northern Ireland, a big handful. Chapman was the same, seeing how awkward Chapman was, which was an advantage to us. We just couldn't control their tempo. And I don't think Howard was very happy. But again, you can have the odd blip.
Draw's never a bad result. If you've got one game to play and that one game you need to win, then it's a disastrous result. But in terms of the season, a draw is not a bad result.
We should have won the game. Obviously, we went off the pitch, and very disappointing. We didn't come away with all points. But like I said, we kept going. We kept working hard. We just couldn't wait to get back out for the next game.
In the course of a season, there will be games you draw that you should win. There'll be games that you win that you should draw, and so on. What we have to concentrate on is how we play week in, week out, turning out the performances.
Consistency of performance would be imperative if Leeds were to win the title, but thoughts of the championship were put on hold when Manchester United came to Elland Road. For most fans and players, this is the game of the season.
It was almost a case if we beat Man United twice, then it doesn't matter what the rest of we do. It was that kind of important to the fans, but obviously we knew it was slightly different, but no, it was still an important to do well against them.
We wanted to win the league games, obviously. If you win your league games, then obviously that's a massive thing to win the league, because it's a lot of games to play. But the cup, if you could win the cup, then obviously that's a plus, that's a bonus.
Howard Wilkinson was presented with the Manager of the Month award for November before the game. The form of the two sides was in stark contrast. Leeds had drawn 3 in a row, United had won 3 in a row. A crowd of over 32,000 was at Elland Road for the crunch.
You always know it's important for the fans, but you just think, again, it becomes like chess. Those games are about not making mistakes. You can be an amateur player and be 50% better. If you're a top player, you're looking for 2% to 3% to make that difference. And that's what Howard sort of worked on, those details.
All I seem to remember was coming out the tunnel at Elland Road, and both sides of the tunnel right on top of you. You could feel it, the atmosphere.
People always say to you, can you hear the noise when you're playing? Sometimes you can't, you just concentrate on your football. But when you've got games like that, you can't hear a thing what your players are saying, what your teammates are saying. You just have to hopefully, you think, but you're doing the right, you've got to pick the right pass and everything, which is unbelievable.
Webb, it's in there, Neil Webb. That was allowed to go a long way across that Leeds United penalty area. Lukic must have seen it very late. But Neil Webb, in the opening minute of the second half, has put Manchester United in the lead.
Well, we certainly didn't have to wait long for this goal we were talking about. It was a beautiful volley. There's a lot of linesmen might have put a flag up there because there was a red jersey. It looked like Giggs maybe in an offside position there, but certainly I wouldn't, because I think a shot from that angle and from that distance, you should be allowed.
Here's Rod Wallace taking it up again for Leeds, looking for this equalising goal. McAllister coming on. A great charge, it's a penalty. Conceded by Pallister, who's not put a foot wrong all afternoon, as McAllister went charging into the box. Gordon Strachan will take the penalty, no doubt. Here we go, Saints.
It was a beautiful move, and you have to say it was a foul. I mean, he just ran straight into him.
And, well, Sterling's decided to take it. Strachan's taken 4 this season and scored with them. Sterling has scored 5 times, twice from the penalty spot. So Mel Sterling looking to make it 1-1. And that's what it is. And what a finish that sets up for us. Superbly, and the joy of the Leeds fans is unrestrained. Excellent penalty there by Mel Sterling, sending Schmeichel the wrong way.
We never thought we were down. We never felt down, even though we'd have a drawn or loss. We just knew we could come back. So really, there was no pressure. It was just a matter of, you know, putting it into the keeper's left, and that's what I did.
The cup games, in a sense, whilst it would have been nice to have stayed in the cups, they weren't such a disaster.
Graham Taylor once said you can't choose what games you're going to win and lose. You can't say let's lose in the cup and be all right in the league. But looking back, you know, the rest you get. From my point of view, you know, being able to concentrate on the league games was more of a bonus than the downside of not winning those football matches. We've seen the top teams now talking about trebles and quadruples and the number of games, and within the last month they lose everything. You know, Arsenal and people like that. So it probably focused us quite well. We just got on with it. It didn't have the negative impact that you may have thought.
3 days later, Leeds were at Upton Park on New Year's Day. This was a fixture which 2 years earlier had drawn massive criticism from the press.
We'd been to West Ham, won 1-0 and got slaughtered by the media. Again, because we went there to win a football match, and we had, you know, there was a way that we were going to do it, and I could never understand the adverse criticism we got that afternoon.
The New Year's Day trip to Upton Park was a must-win game for Leeds, having drawn their previous 4 matches. They needed to be back on track if they were to keep up the pressure on Man United, and it took only 11 minutes for Lee Chapman to head in Gary McAllister's cross. That took him into double figures for the season. But just 13 minutes later, West Ham were level. Frank McAvenny hooked the ball on to Kevin Keane. He was through on goal, and Tony DeRigo was adjudged by referee Bridges to have shoved the opponent aside inside the penalty area. That seemed harsh. West Ham's regular spot kick specialist Julian Dix levelled things up. Chapman was causing a lot of problems to the West Ham defence, and it was Gary McAllister who accepted the striker's layoff to smash the ball past Ludo McCloskey. Leeds back in front. And they wrapped up the points after tenacious work from Mel Sterling down the right. Rod Wallace picked out strike partner Chapman to make it 3-1. The victory took Leeds back to the top of the table, with news from Old Trafford that Manchester United had surprisingly lost 4-1 to Queen's Park Rangers.
Howard were over the moon when we beat them 3-1, and we played some great football, and we shut the press up, and we shut the fans up, and it were a bonus, as we say, to come away from London with the points in the bag.
Leeds had leapfrogged Man United back to top spot the day after Alex Ferguson's 50th birthday, which would have certainly spoiled his celebrations. However, defeating the Rumbelows Cup added weight to the argument that Leeds, despite their form, were still a long way behind their Pennine rivals. The cup defeats had been seen live on TV, and with the critics waiting, so was the game against Sheffield Wednesday.
I seen them a lot, looked at some videos and knew that how they like to play, how they like to build up from the back and so on. So we worked very, very hard when we lost possession up in their half.
I remember Gary Speed and myself and Rod Wallace on the left-hand side. I mean, it just worked a dream, And then when we tucked in, Mel was off down the other side, and when he tucked in, we were off again down the other side. It was just one of those games that everything kind of worked.
When we had it, we were very, very good. Tony DeRigo scored a terrific set piece, I remember.
When you hit them sweet, they just kind of don't even move. Sometimes, the ball turned. This one just went, and Woodsy thankfully didn't get anywhere near it, so it was great.
We had to recover from a penalty that never was, which caused a lot of problems.
He shouldn't have done that. That just got us angry. Wasn't it? We were nowhere near. I think it was Huggy, Chris White, or made a challenge, but nowhere near him. And from then on, we played fantastically well.
We just blitzed them. It was just like everything worked. It's one of those games where you think everything we've practiced and everything that's been working on just falls into place, and that doesn't happen very often.
The planning, the execution, and the result were all 10 out of 10.
Fairclough getting up well and turned in by Chapman. Hodge in the wall, it's DeRigo, has it! Oh my word, what a goal that was! A good free kick swept out to Nielsen. And again, he's given it away, or has he? A misunderstanding, Watson goes down, and it's a penalty. Leeds United are furious, and several of their players have raced over towards the linesman. They feel that was a bit of play acting by Watson, and I have some sympathy for their views. And Sheridan. And he's done it at the second attempt. DeRigo. That's good running and a fine ball. Speed. First time towards Chapman. Oh, a magnificent goal by Lee Chapman. And flicked dangerously on, and it was Speed who headed against the crossbar. Wallace gets it back in, and Chapman was on the line to make absolutely sure. And since that's all about a hat-trick, I'm sure he'll claim it. Still looking for goals here, and they've got another! A splendid header! DeRigo again. This is Chapman, scorer of a hat-trick, on to McAllister, on again to Whitlow, who's got another goal and finds Wallace with that lovely ball, and it's 6 for Leeds United.
That was a truly amazing result, and it certainly silenced the doubters. It was Leeds' biggest away win for over 60 years. The only bad news came when Lee Chapman, who'd been absolutely brilliant in the game, broke his wrist 3 days later against Manchester United in the FA Cup third-round defeat. The initial prognosis was he could be out for 8 weeks.
Chappie had an injury. I think it was a broken wrist, which was going to keep him out for a while, for the foreseeable future. And I saw that as a serious loss at that time of year going into the games we had.
Wilkinson selected Gary Speed as cover for Chapman at home to Crystal Palace, but it was the Eagles skipper, Jeff Thomas, who was on target first, a spectacular volley from 20 yards. His opposite number, Gordon Strachan, was once again pulling the strings, but Nigel Martin in the Palace goal was inspired, twice denying Steve Hodge. With Gary McAllister going off with a groin injury, it was left to Chris Fairclough to level the match up, meeting a Gary Speed flick-on for his first goal of the season. Well, that was a disappointing result, but on a brighter note, Manchester United had surprisingly dropped points themselves against Notts County at Meadow Lane. Notts County would be the next visitors to Ellen Road, and having dropped out of the FA Cup, Leeds were without a league game for 2 weeks. Speculation was now rife about a replacement for Chapman. Despite the disappointment of dropping points at home, Leeds were still a point clear of their Red Rose rivals, who did have 2 games in hand, however. It was beginning to look like a 2-horse race.